My name is Monk Rowe for the Phillies Jazz Archive, and I'm very pleased to have Anthony Wilson with me today. And I've been thinking about the opening question, which is, really important. Um, I'm going to make a statement and see if you can finish it. So the statement is make,
Okay.
making a living as a musician in 2026 is.
Is a completely dynamic process, ever changing, uh, really requiring a dedication, at least I've found, or how it works for me, uh, always, always some kind of rededication to my own uh, principles of what I think is important in music. Why? Because there are so many things coming at us all the time that are where the message is it's as though these things coming at us, for instance, something like social media, uh, and the desire, say, or the impulse to become a so-called content creator, something like that. That's talking to you, and that's saying, dedicate time to me. Do this. If you do this, there will be an outcome that you will feel is takes you to the next level in your career or in your work. And what I found for me is that all the things that are vying for my attention, if I don't, if I lose sense of my own core principles, what I think is important in music, it can be very easy to just lose my footing. And I think working with a lot of students, I know that that's the case. Young musicians who are trying to become established articulate this to me quite a bit. So I think it requires you you need to make a living. You need to support yourself. Money needs to come in so that you can pay your bills, etc., support a family, whatever, what have you. For me, the times that I'm most clear in my musical goals, I'm able to respond to all of the different talk coming at me in a clearer way. Whatever it requires. If it's just that, I'm okay running around a little less if I have a little more time to dedicate to my own personal practice. So every little gig that comes across, maybe sometimes I'm saying no so that I have a little more space in my life to concentrate on the core principles, on study, on getting better, particularly in music. So
You said core principles two or three, four times.
so
Can can
what
you
are they
can
probably,
you
right?
share some?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, for me, as a player of guitar, I'm a guitar player. I'm looking always to hone my uh, harmonic and melodic acumen. Just get clearer about how harmony works, how melody works, how they are intertwined. Um, uh, because I'm very interested in the continuity of the history of jazz and how it plays into to me as a continuation of that history. A deep involvement in studying history, learning what people did, how they did it, realizing that usually I'm not the one reinventing the wheel. There was probably somebody, even in the 1930s. For instance, I'm constantly just having my mind blown by somebody like George Van Epps, a guitar player like George Van Epps. It's like there are things that he plays that are so state of the art in 2026. When he was a young man, early recordings, that very few, it's very obvious to me that very few guitarists since, say, the 1960s have even addressed, because guitar playing went on a kind of a different tangent. On it, the branches of the tree went out in a different way, and so people who go back and reclaim, things George Barnes, George Van Epps, Bucky Pizzarelli, things that these folks did, Charlie Christian, Lonnie Johnson. They're almost like completely new things because they were left in a certain place in the tree, and other musicians haven't studied them. So that kind of study of older things and finding out my own place within the continuum is a principle for me. It's something that I want to be clear about. I want to understand that, and I want to understand how the music evolved. Sometimes that just enables me in a band. Somebody might call me to come and play music, and I just feel a little more completely equipped to address the music that they're presenting to me, because I'm finding the options along a larger continuum. So that's really important to me.
If you go back and think about
Making
when you go back and think about George Van Epps and Bucky and the way they learned, like, it's careful not to make generalizations, but this massive jazz education and YouTube videos did not exist. And do you think that the way they learned resulted in what you're describing of them? That incredible inventiveness.
the way they learned very possibly could be a key to that. Uh, Um, for many reasons. One thing that I've noticed, say, in looking at George Van Epps's method books, or Johnny Smith's method books, or even a slightly later player such as Jimmy Weibel, who is a real favorite of mine, and who really innovated a lot of beautiful conceptual frameworks around playing independent lines on the guitar, which is difficult, and it's a real maze because it involves a lot of specificities of fingering and string choice. So what I noticed with those players is that there is a great deal of importance placed on fingering. Um, and that might have come from some combination of the fact that they were also probably gleaning some things from classical type of education, methods. These kind of also these Mel Bay method books that used to exist that a lot of people really were deeply deeply involved in. My teacher Ted Green, who was a real follower of George Van Epps as well. His first experiences kind of learning the layout of the fretboard were around these Mel Bay method books, and there was a lot of emphasis on kind of a rigor in fingering. Now, that seems to me, and then there were certain kinds of harmonic ways that people named things and I think probably the way they conceived of things, say in the 1930s, 1940s, that are really different than the way things began to be referred to, say, in the 1960s. I sensed the real flowering of jazz education and institutions was happening around 60s, 70s, and onwards, and then onwards and upwards into this kind of huge internet thing where I can't even seem to wake up in the morning without seeing about 100 instructional things that go deep into chord functions, or, if you just do this one little hack, you'll be able to play over every alter dominant. I don't think in 1939 or 42, when Charlie Christian, John Collins, all of these guitarists who are real heroes for me, first of all, the amount of kind of information wasn't there, but there was this kind of rigor around getting the beauty together of your fingering and the logic of moving around the instrument, and then some kind of gleaning in the community around how harmony worked, how you resolved certain chords, this sound was this sound, and there was also a kind of a pianism among guitar players in that era, for sure. They wanted their playing to be kind of as complete harmonically as it could be, so they were working on covering bass lines, covering melodies on top, and then inner voice motion that seemed like it made sense. So you hear on recordings, say in the 30s and the 40s into the early 50s, late 50s, these beautiful introductions or accompaniments to vocalists or duo, trio kinds of things, maybe without drums, that guitar players seem to be just picking up quite a bit of, things from the great piano players, people like Teddy Wilson, Art Tatum, Nat King Cole, on into the bebop players, Bud Powell, etc., and Monk, and kind of just finding the connections. But it was, my sense is, the way they learned was more about the rigor of the playing itself around fingerings, kind of right hand techniques, and then just making the harmony work within the context, which was also a smaller context of the kinds of songs and harmonies that existed at that time. If it's 2026 and somebody's wanting me to play something that's like a Radiohead song, and then they want me to play something that's similar to certain kinds of West African rhythms and harmonies, there's just so many things, Brazilian stuff, South American stuff. People are gleaning and grabbing from so many places. Maybe the process is rather similar, but yeah, my sense was that there was a kind of a rigor around just solid, beautiful technique and learning how the principles of harmony worked. Things like cycles, voice leading between chords that made sense. And yeah.
Was there ever any? When did you decide that you were going to be a professional musician? I think what I'm trying to get at. Did it seem like a fate that this was going to be for you?
A little bit. There were some other things that I was interested in as a youngster. I always really liked music, and when I picked up the guitar, which was around the age of 7, and I also, and for your people who might check into this who don't quite know my history, my father was Gerald Wilson. He was a jazz musician, a trumpet player, composer, and arranger, and so he also encouraged me when I wanted to play guitar, because I was growing up as a kid in the 1970s, and I kind of wanted to play rock and roll and all kinds of songs that I heard from my favorite bands and things like that. Um, but my dad also said, well, it would be good if you learn to get around on the piano, and I'll teach you some pieces. He taught me, Für Elise, Beethoven. He taught me Satie, Gymnopédie, just things where I could start to understand how to make chords. He taught me how to play a little bit of blues on the piano. And he also said, well, you might want to play trumpet. That was his instrument, so he was kind of pushing me towards it. And he taught me little things on the trumpet as well, little songs, When the Saints Go Marching In, Green Dolphin Street, teach me, and he would always teach me little melodies and then ways that I could embellish the melodies. And sometimes he'd make up little solos for me to learn, kind of little contrafact like solos based on a tune. And he'd say, if you learn to do this, you'll be able to learn to improvise. So at around 7, 8, 9, 10, I was already kind of getting into that. So it was natural to play music, and I started little bands with my friends at school. But I don't think at that early that I thought, oh, this is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. Because I also got into like doing plays in school and acting. I did get into singing, which I would say is also musical. So I was in choirs and things like that. But I think the fate part is that I was pretty good at it quickly. It came naturally to me. If somebody taught me a melody, I usually could memorize it really quickly, which is still to this day. If I go, it's only maybe even a little faster. If somebody teaches me their music, I can usually get off book very fast and not be reading the music on the gig because I just absorb very quickly. So I think that just kept going. And even though I was interested in drama and choral singing and things, I just kept with the guitar, and I just kept with it so long that then towards the end of high school and into college, people would say, do you want to come and do this gig? Do you want to come and do this? Can you do this? And I just kept on doing it. And certainly during the years of college age, I didn't see any way out of it. Like I didn't think, okay, I'll get out of college and then I'll go do something else. It was like, this is how I like to spend my time. The people that I get to be with, I
Yeah.
love them. They're good friends.
Do you recall the first
This is my
time you
community.
recall the first time that you got paid to play music?
Probably it could have been my father might have been the first person to hire me, but around the age of 16 or 17, I really wanted to play in his band. He was hesitant. So that's the only reason I think maybe I might have been doing some gigs with other high school friends where we got to play a party or something like that and got a little money for it. Um, that might be more accurately the case where we got to go and play a party or a dance or something and got a little money. But around the same time, yeah, I was kind of pressing my dad. I wanted to join his band. One of his very close friends who I was very close to, he was almost a godfather to me, was a saxophonist Harold Land. And Harold really liked my playing, and so he hired me to come and play with his band that included Billy Higgins and Oscar Brashear uh, the bassist Richard Reed, whose son is drummer Damian Reed, who's playing quite a bit these days with everybody, and also Harold's son Harold Land Jr. played piano in that band. So I mean, I would say around 16, 17, I got to play quite a bit
How
with
did your
Harold
mom?
and start learning his music.
How did your mom feel about all this?
My mom was super encouraging about it all. I mean, she could see that I wanted to do. I mean, even when I first wanted to take lessons and when I first wanted to do music, my dad was the one, strangely enough, or maybe ironically enough, who said, Anthony, I think for him, music. He was already in his late 50s. He'd had a long career already that coincided with segregated history in America and all that it took to be a black musician coming up and everything that they were up against. And I think music, as much as it was love for him, it was also a very serious thing, and you didn't just enter into it in a cavalier way. And so he'd say, are you really serious about it? Do you really? And my mom was just like, Gerald, let him go and just let him take the lessons, and he wants to do it. And so it's funny that way. And when he saw and when she saw that I was really into it, that I really wanted to do it, that nothing was ever stopping me from getting together with people to play or sitting and practicing for hours, it was the first thing that I wanted to do was just get with my guitar and play. Um, then it was like go and do it. And when there were chances, we put together bands in high school and we played dances and parties and stuff like that. It was like, just go and do it. And if you're going to be late, make sure you call in, because we don't want to worry about you.
Did,
My
did,
mom would really
yeah,
want to worry. So
yeah. Did you have to pump him, Gerald, for those darker stories that I know that most of the musicians in that generation experienced, especially the black
mm.
musicians?
I think my dad wanted me to know about all the things that he had experienced because he knew that there might not be other ways for me to learn about that kind of American history. Um, you know, definitely in school we learned about we we learned about slavery. We learned about civil rights. We learned a bit about it, but my dad would just say, "Hey, this is the way it was for me. When I was a young person and I started in bands." He would make it very simple. He actually didn't make it dark. He would say, you know, there were two different kinds of bands. There were black bands and there were white bands. And he'd say, and that was because, then he would go more deeply into why things had ended up that way, and what that residue was, uh, but and how it affected him, and the idea that he'd say in the town I grew up in Mississippi, in Shelby, Mississippi, we could only go to a certain water fountain. If we went to see the picture show, we had to go to a different part of the theater than white people. And this was what we saw, and it never made sense to me, and I never liked it, and he would say because he had white growing as even as a very young person, he had white friends, in the town. And so it always troubled him that that these people who he considered his friends could go over here, but he couldn't go over here, or they had to go through the back, or that part of the town was off limits to them unless, they knew that they were with somebody's parents, you know. But the sense of danger, the sense of darkness, sadness to it, I knew how it affected him. And then he said, the one thing I wanted to do was get away from the South, because he was reading things like the Chicago Defender newspaper, which would come south, and it was painting a picture of at least a situation in the North where it was a bit less segregated and there might be more opportunities for black people to get jobs. So he would tell me about this, and he'd say, oh, the first time I went to Chicago, I did start to experience, even though generally the blacks lived in a different neighborhood, but the sense that you could just walk down the street without everybody questioning who you were and why you were there, it was much looser and there were more possibilities. And so for him, it was always some kind of journey away from that sense of separation, Jim Crow. But he let me in on it. He liked to say, if it was important to him that somebody like Benny Goodman did what he did by opening up his band and including Teddy Wilson, Charlie Christian, and Lionel Hampton, how important that was and how meaningful, and because how the musicians were always learning from each other anyway, that this sense of some kind of enforced segregation was so opposite of the spirit of the music. He shared to me how he felt and what possibilities he saw for change. Yeah.
Of all the people I've talked to in your father's generation, and they tell these stories, I've taken note of rarely do they tell them with anger. They learn to deal with it. Sometimes even like Joe Wilder told these, it's like unbelievable stories, like it was and he laughed about it because it was so absurd. It made a deep impression on me.
Yeah. Yeah. It was so much a part of the fabric of any of their lives. If they wanted to go buy a house someplace, so they start to have some success. They want to go buy a house. They're dealing with the segregated real estate redlining kinds of things. It sort of always reared its ugly head, or they'd have a negative experience once they thought that they were well past it. And so I think the only thing you could do is try to have some kind of lightness about it, or else you'd become very, very, very bitter, and he didn't, as I grew older and I understood things more, I'd say that he fleshed out his anger and his sadness more for me, about how it all felt, and I'm really glad that I learned that history from him in that way, that it wasn't that it was oral history,
Yeah.
that it wasn't kind of in the classroom, and it wasn't. Some people are going to have to learn it in a text,
Right.
in a classroom situation, because they might not get exposed to it at all. And I mean, we've been going through a lot of these discussions over these last years, and there's a lot of layers to that which we don't have to get into, but it's important that people learn what happened
Yeah.
in this country. It's you just have to know, you know.
Well, one of my most memorable experiences was speaking with Gerald, like it was almost 31 years ago. But I wanted to share
Hmm.
this. Um, Seems like a good time to share this comment that he made near the end of the interview. I've paraphrased it a bit, but he said, "Really, all of my dreams have come true. I wrote for Duke Ellington, two concerts at Carnegie Hall. I've written for the movies, TV work. I wrote for the Los Angeles Philharmonic. Zubin Mehta conducted all my numbers. All of my dreams have been answered."
Yes, and I think that's really how he felt. Um, I really think that's how he felt, and um, yeah, and it speaks to me to uh, just being able to be clear and counting your own blessings and knowing what your dream was. I mean, it goes back to the first thing that you asked me. Like if 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 I'm thinking constantly about everything else that I want or something more, kind of like or kind of comparing successes of other people or things that opportunities that I might want, that I risk missing missing what I've dreamed about and what I've actually achieved. If you can stay in contact with the simplicity of why you got into something and what's important to you, um, and look around and for me see what I'm doing from day to day. It's a mixed bag of all kinds of things. I go out and I play on the road. I'm doing recording sessions. I teach at two universities. I'm writing things for myself. I have personal projects that are things that I'm bringing to fruition, and that's the stuff that I want to have in the world. Those are the kinds of relationships with the students to keep things going, the kinds of gigs I'm doing them. It's very simple, and to be able to kind of connect with that, I think is important because it just in 2026 it's just so crazy. It's just so
It
crazy.
is
I really
crazy.
think he meant that. I
Can you
think he
tell
meant
me?
that, you know.
I got to ask about writing charts. Um, I've written a
Okay.
bunch of charts, and I started out on paper, and then eventually, went to Finale, Sibelius, etc. But can you recall the first time you wrote a chart and the first time you heard it played? What that feeling was like?
Sure, sure. I remember very clearly because I got a chance to go to a kind of a jazz camp. I think after ninth grade or so, there's a town called Idlewild here in Southern California in the San Bernardino Mountains. And there was a summer program that they had there. This place, which is called Idlewild School of the Arts, I think now, and it's now a full-time school, like a year-round school. At that time, just had summer programs for music, classical music, folk music, visual arts, dance, all kinds of things. And I told my mom and my dad, I said I want to go to this jazz camp, and so figured out how to make it happen and went, and and there was a little big band that we were part of, and learning to read charts, and I got in my mind that I wanted to try to make an arrangement. I didn't know anything about making arrangements at all. I was completely like I knew nothing. I'm sure somewhere here in my boxes I still have the paper. But so, I had watched my dad sit at the piano and kind of test out chords because I was nowhere near being able to do that from the guitar. I just I was not good enough yet but I could kind of pound out things on the piano, and I just got my little score paper, and I think the tune that I tried to do so above my pay grade at like the I wrote two charts I think that year. I did one for The Night Has a Thousand Eyes because I really liked the way that Coltrane played it, and I liked the way that Harold Land played it, and they had that kind of a vamp that was sort of modal, you know, and so I pounded out those chords on the piano, and I just sort of distributed the notes to different instruments, you know, and wrote the melody. You know, I think I don't maybe had a saxophone and a trumpet playing the melody. Most of it was probably a chorus worth of a chart, you know, and then maybe when we took solos, I said, okay, well, you know, the brass, you can just play the same thing as kind of a background when it's, you know, and it wasn't so good, but the notes were like, when I heard that the voicings sounded like what I thought that they should sound like in a few places, it was enough for me to get into it. I was like, oh, if I can, if I just know, oh, I stack those notes and I give them to the different instruments, if I'm right about the notes, then it'll sound right. If I don't know, there were definitely tons of voicings that I didn't have right and they didn't sound so good, but they didn't sound really bad. I mean, they were just okay. But then the next one I tried was a blues, and I wrote a little head, a blues head, and I wrote a chart around it, and I did little solo backgrounds, and it came out good. Like it came out from the first thing that I tried to the second, it was like, oh, I did a little thing where the saxophones did a little kind of a bend, like a bend up to a thing, and then a little soli. Maybe, you know, maybe it could have been
Nice.
the two bars where they played a little passage, all harmonized. Not not great, but like it worked. It worked, and that to me, because I'd already started writing tunes. You know, I would write tunes for bands that I would play in, and so I was just that hit me with the bug to always keep on writing both tunes and then try to write arrangements of them, you know, and harmonize little things and make up backgrounds and intros and endings and things like that,
Yeah.
you know,
Did you ever
come up
study
with a
your
bass.
Did you ever study any of your father's scores?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, eventually,
Yeah.
very deeply, partly from the standpoint of doing some copying for him. Um, Sometimes something would need to be recopied, so you know some parts got lost, so he'd give me a score, and I would go and this was by hand. Um, And then later on, when we had music software and things needed to be put back into shape or things were missing, I started really studying those scores, you know, down to exact voicings, creating, you know, like my own little journals of how to voice a certain thing for trombones or for a full brass section in an ensemble or for a saxophone section, learning like, okay, what works, and then and that's and I still do. I mean, because from time to time these days we're working with music that's in his archive that I have to go back in and do a bit of editing with. Um, and so it's so much fun to see how he did things.
Yeah.
He really had his own voice, and for me, that's one of the big lessons. And for all of the arrangers that I love and writers, I mean, over the years playing with Diana Krall, I had a lot of opportunity to work both with Klaus Ogerman and with Johnny Mandel, and both of them were very open. Like they would give you scores to study. They'd be like, my dad wasn't so much like that. If some student or he wasn't, that wasn't, you might have seen that. He didn't really like sending arrangements to schools and bands. His way of doing it was if he had worked with the school, he would donate the pieces that they had played. But he always kind of felt very protective. But somebody like Klaus Ogerman, whose voicings are so they have such a beautiful voice to him, he would just show me, and he'd say, "This is the score. This is why I call this chord this. This is how the upper voices are moving against the foundational chord." Because he was also teaching me how to play. He'd give me a guitar part and he'd say, "This is what the strings are going to be doing. This is why I called this and not, say, a B flat 7. This is why it's an E. It's why it's an E7 with something, and this is what I want you to play." And he'd show me on the score. Johnny was very similar in the sense, just very open. And so I learned from those people, and they had very individual ways of writing, and they had very strong voices as arrangers. And I think the thing that I picked up most from them was that that's the thing to do, is develop your own voice in your writing, whatever it's going to take to do that.
I've noticed working with, I use Finale, and I find that when I finish a chart or almost finish it, I go back, and because it's doable, I start taking out things. Like, this doesn't need all this, and it's useful for that, I think. And the other
Oh yeah.
interesting thing is sometimes I've made a mistake entering a note, and I didn't realize it. And then you play it back, and you go, "Hey, that's pretty hip." Like,
And
I
it's
wish I'd
not,
done it
and you
on
like it.
purpose.
Yeah, totally. I'm very in support of, well, first, yeah, definitely those happy accidents that happen from using technology. And yeah, I mean, there's a great power to and value in being able to hear things back. Um, just the quickness of being able to put together something. I mean, recently with my 9-piece band, there was just a song that I'd been wanting to play, um, and I knew it was going to require sort of partly transcribing it from the recording that I'd been listening to, uh, but it turned out I knew the person who had written the song. He sent me a lead sheet, so I had this lead sheet and I had his recording, and then I had a gig, and I think it was, say, Friday, and I had a gig on Saturday, and I thought, I want to play this with my 9-piece band uh, on Saturday. And I might have been able to, certainly, but pencil and paper do it, but I might have been up into the night just because to make it legible. And the fact that I could just get on there, I've got a score template, I know what the song is, get the form there, do it, start making my arrangement. I was still working on kind of hearing voicings, testing things out on a piano or on the guitar, and then bringing them in. But how facile we can be by we're inputting the notes, we print out the thing. If we need to change or edit, boom, and now we have something very quickly that we can present to a band.
Yeah, I
You know,
like the thing you did on with your 9-piece band called Border Town.
okay,
There's a video
okay.
of that, and it was very appropriate because it's like it's funky and bluesy, and you're in the background. You've got all the booze, like it was in a
Yes,
club or something.
that's right.
Yeah,
That's right.
it was perfect.
That's right. That's a club that we play at a lot here in LA called Sam First, And yeah, we're right in front of the bar when we play. So
I
yeah,
see.
and that's a beautiful song by Benny Wallace, who I love. And yeah, it's so rewarding to write. I mean, that's one thing my dad told me. He used to say, always make sure you keep your chops up on your instrument, because it becomes very tempting when you get into writing to just write forever. It's really beautiful. It's an amazing process, and so
So I'm going to play. I guess we could call this a blindfold test,
okay, great,
and I hope that this is listenable.
okay. Uh-huh. Yeah.
For our folks at home, you picked an interesting Beatles song.
Yes. Well, I love that whole. I love the whole Abbey Road. Well, I love all Beatles. Beatles were one of the main reasons that I even picked up the guitar. I mean, that's what I was listening to in 1974, 75. I just loved all the Beatles records and Rolling Stones, Bob Dylan, Joni Mitchell. So that I grew up on that, and I love that particular song because it's kind of like a funky little minor blues in its way, and I had that. That's from an album that I made called Our Gang, and we had an organ trio with an organist named Joe Bagg and a drummer named Mark Ferber, who are still really great friends and colleagues to me these days. Um, but yeah, that just really worked with the B3 and kind of the vibe of the song, you know. Yeah.
Here's something a little different. Oh, hold on one second.
Yes, yes.
So I'm going to group you with Antonio Vivaldi, Astor Piazzolla, and Anthony Wilson, writing about the
These would be
seasons, correct?
people who've written about the Four Seasons.
Yes,
Yeah, yeah.
you're in good
That's a
company.
that's a piece that I had so much fun writing. Um, it was commissioned for me to write by the fellow who built the main guitar that I play, a guy named John Monteleone, who builds guitars in Islip, New York, on Long Island, and he at a certain point he built a quartet of guitars, and he built them. Normally a guitar builder is building, say, for a client. You come to him and say, I want a guitar that does this or that's, and then he'll build for you. But he built these four guitars as a kind of a personal project, and he built them over a period of several years. And the driving concept was the change of the seasons that he would experience as he looked out his workshop window, and he would see, winter turn to spring, turn to summer and fall, and that cycle really was a deep part of his building and creative process. And so he built these four guitars. One was winter, one was spring, one was fall, autumn, one was summer. And then he got in his mind that he didn't he wanted to find a way to have them played together and not just like have people get together and play different tunes on them, which would be fine as well, but some music written particularly for them. So as he was building the guitars over a period of a couple of years, I would go and visit him in his workshop, and as one was finished, he'd put it in my hands and I would just sit and play these guitars. And I eventually began to kind of create a cycle of songs that I felt created also their own kind of self-contained journey through the seasons. And so it was a really fun to write. And it's all very guitaristic stuff, but the passage that you played, which is from the Spring Movement, I loved writing that because that's almost like writing a saxophone solely for guitars. The guitars are moving, the lines are moving fast, and they're harmonized. Everything's harmonized, and it's an exhilarating thing to play.
Was
So I
everything
love that.
was everything written out? Because I was watching the video, and on occasion, I don't want to make a conclusion about this, but on occasion, someone would be playing and they'd look up at you, almost like, you're in a jazz quartet and you sort of, okay, I'm passing it on now.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. I wrote those. The framework of them was as through composed movements of a particular four movements of a suite, but within those movements there are various ways in which we can veer off, we can open up to improvisation. It can change every time. So I mean, there's one particular recording of it where we were just learning the music and just getting it together. We've had the opportunity to play these pieces over the years a few times, and I've got a little core group of people who know the music very well. Sometimes we have to get a sub, if not everybody's available, but we know it well enough at this point that it can be, hey, why don't you set up an intro for this one? Or, what happens if we get rid of this section? We've tried lots of different things in that sense of kind of making it open for a looser jazz approach. But then there's still all the writing that holds the form together. And I just kind of look for a situation where it's possible that the form keeps things tight, but not so tight that it's like, oh, okay, every time we play it, it's the same.
Yeah, right.
That's never interesting to me. So so as part of my practice and all the things that I do to keep a possibility that it's modular. We might move a section. We might, you know, I just love that possibility that we have with improvising. So for sure, what you saw is there were moments probably like, and also I encourage people, if you have a melody, but you hear some kind of embellishment or some kind of ornamentation that doesn't get in the way or some kind of fill, I love that. You know, as a composer, I'm not so tied to what I've written that I'm not okay with hearing the contributions that people can make. You know, it's same way as when you find that you put a note down wrong, but it turns out to be a beautiful thing on finale. You know, something that somebody contributes might end up really becoming part of a song because of how great it is, or the way they interpret it. You know.
All right, here's one more.
Okay.
When I put that
So
on,
good.
I um, I was so struck by the the feel of the horns that's sort of just behind the thing of da, 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 and chunk, chunk, chunk.
Yeah.
Marvelous. The veteran musicians who know this is how this needs to feel. Like
Mm, mm. Yeah, that State Street Suite. That's if I'm right about what that piece
you
is.
are.
Played
It's
it
your
played it
father's
so
piece.
much with my dad.
Yeah.
Yeah. And oh yeah. And I mean it, if going back to that first thing that you asked me and then me talking about core principles, specific things around the music that I am so interested in and that means so much to me are exactly the thing that you just articulated. The rhythmic character of the music and what that represents. Even in a simple phrase like that, dee da dee da da dun, 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 doo, doo, da, da. How we place things in time against a pulse. Um, I'm working on this so much with my students all the time. That as they get better, one of the things that is so obvious when they start to master, become more kind of find some more mastery in the music, is when it's around that kind of thing, how they place things and not forcing things and using simple rhythms rather than being overly complex. And it's similar to the kinds of more broad things that people used to say, like tell your story with music or whatever. But 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 as it comes down to musical specifics, da, 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 how those eighth notes play against the pulse in anything. We could take anything. If we're listening to Bill Evans Trio, if we're listening to Ahmad Jamal Trio, if we're listening to Miles, any of those bands, if we're listening to Count Basie, my dad, so it's infinite, really. There's so much music that's been made that really, you know, and super modern stuff. But how we orient ourselves to the rhythmic pulse of the music, I think, is the real key there. And as we get better at that, then everything sort of falls into place because you realize how little you have to fight anymore.
Yeah, I
You
love
don't have
that.
to fight. You don't have to fight the groove, so that your simple melody with a simple rhythm, no matter how complex the music gets you there. And I think I find that in a lot. Like the musicians that I really love to play with, they all seem to kind of get that, so that the most kind of heavy stuff, crazy stuff, it's there too. It's there, and people will dazzle you with all kinds of stuff. But but I can tell you that the people who figure out how to groove, how to make it groove, and not fight it and make it feel so good. I love that too. I love that too.
Before we run out of time here, I'd like to ask you about your photography and this uh, project you did a number of years ago with music
Mm.
and photography. And do you, for you, are there artistic elements that photography and music share?
Yes, absolutely. Uh, but it's difficult to talk about them. It's difficult to make the comparisons. I actually participated in a kind of a little group discussion recently that's somewhat related to this. I have a friend named Ron Jude who's an incredible, incredible photographer. He works well. He lives in Eugene, Oregon, and he teaches at the University of Oregon. Um, and he's done all kinds of photography projects, and they're all great. I mean, he's really incredible. But he's a huge music fan, and he's super into. He's like an audiophile, and so he loves to listen to vinyl, and he's got a really high end tube system and great speakers. And he had come to be really inspired by my work and by my interest in photography as well. And he contributed a cover image to one of my albums. And then there's another guy that we both know who's a musician named Michael Muller, who's also into photography. And he does more kind of, he's a musician, more kind of ambient music, very kind of meditative music, kind of soundscapes, very beautiful. And he's got the album that I love the most of his is called Mirror. So his name is Michael A. Muller. So Ron Jude was coming to LA. He had an exhibit, and he said, I'd like to do an event where we talk a little bit about the relationship of photographic images to music and sound. So we got together and we talked, and I found it a little bit difficult to talk about what the similarities are or how we compare them, because when you try to do a direct comparison, it's really difficult. I mean, if I have a practice of going out with cameras and photographing in the street. So sometimes I just have a camera strapped over my shoulder and I'm out walking, say, in my neighborhood or any neighborhood or in nature, and things kind of somehow appeal to me experientially, and I see something, and they're usually, the way they feel to me are like small moments. You know, they're not just things or objects. It's like there's a kind of a moment or something that happened between me and my environment, and that sort of inspires me to take up the camera, focus in there, and freeze the moment, right? And it's 1/500th of a second or 1/1000th of a second. Very different than music happening in time, constantly flowing. And as I improvise, picking out of what I'm hearing in the flow something to play, because it never stops. It keeps going. There's no freezing, So on a camera, I click the shutter, I freeze something. But when I play, if I'm improvising, I got to keep going. It's about the keeping going. So to me, they don't exactly feel like they're directly comparable. But I think one of the things that appeals to me about both things, even the more slowed down process of composing, choosing a chord progression or choosing melody notes or hearing what that is in a slowed down way, rather than somebody counts off a tune and now I'm just playing. It has to happen so fast. Like, that's so different than composing and going, well, this should be an E flat, not an E natural, right? But they're all very related, right? And then this snapping a shutter, okay, because then it's done, right? It's done. But that little infinitesimal part of the moment that happens constantly, it keeps going when we're improvising. It's got to keep going. But each one of those is a kind of a choice of attention, of where I put my attention. And I think maybe that's why I love these things all so much, is that they're exercises in attention and presence just being present to do it. It's going to be different if I'm sitting down at a piano, writing a chart, deciding how do I want that to be voiced? Is it this inversion? Is it that inversion? I got as much time as I need, other than maybe there being a deadline, right?
Yeah.
So I can make those choices, but there's that moment where something clicks, you know, and where you kind of know it's the right voicing, or it's the right voice leading. You just know it. All the other choices sort of fall away, and you're left with this, And you might go back and edit it later, but you still, there was that moment where it kind of clicked for you. And in improvising, for sure, we're experiencing that constantly. And hopefully, if we're not judging ourselves too much while we're playing and going, oh, I shouldn't have played that note, or ugh, I don't like the way that sounds, which there's no place for that, because ugh, I don't like the way that sounds took the space for me to even say and think that, took 2 bars of the music.
That's right.
From my
it's there and
attention.
gone.
Yeah. So the only thing I can offer, and I think the real powerful thing that has a lot of value for creative people, for artists, for musicians, for photographers, I can offer my presence in the moment, and I can really be there. And I think I really love that. And I would say, I'd just add to it that I think that's actually I find it a difficult thing for me to do sometimes, just like in life. Going back to the first thing that we said, there's just so much coming at us. I think a lot of people talk about having these kind of ADHD and ADD spectrum stuff going on. Maybe so, maybe not. I don't know. But I know for sure, me getting through life, I need to make lists. I need to remind myself, because as I go, like I can be a little flighty all over the place, but these things, playing the music, picking up a guitar, giving a lesson, there are things that ground me. Even a conversation like this kind of grounds me. I can go off on tangents, but I'm staying present. I'm tracking my thinking, and I found that working with photography had the same kind of feeling for me, and I think it's why I like it so much. And then it's like everything flows into the photograph, all the before and what happened after. It's just sort of all there, but it's there by implication. If you were present and you kind of you're there and you framed it, when the framing is right and the composition is right, it's like that thing clicked for the person. They were really there. So yeah.
Right. I got one last question.
Then you can take, yeah.
Um,
Go ahead.
Actually, I can start like at the beginning, but this is finish this question. For aspiring musicians, these days better have. That's the question. Better have fill in the blank.
Aspiring musicians these days better have something to refer to or to pay attention to that they really, really like. It probably goes without saying, but I just think that, if to have a kind of a model, some music that really means a lot to you. And I mean, as a teacher, this can be really interesting, because who I want to be that my student's model might not be. They might come in, I might have a student and they go, well, I really like Have you heard of Domi and J.D. Beck? Have you heard of them?
No.
They're a young duo. They have a couple records on Blue Note. They're quite interesting.
Oh, it's
They're
a keyboardist and a
uh,
drummer or something like that.
exactly,
Yes. Okay.
exactly, exactly. And uh, that might be the thing that they really love. Anything that you really love will be a portal to other things. So if you really love, if somehow you discovered Lenny Tristano and you love Lenny Tristano, then I think it's just something that you can dig into. Um, I really love bebop. I really love modal styles of playing. I really love old swing. I really love it might not have to be a person. It's just there's something that's drawing you in like a magnet to keep you involved and to I think that's something that you I don't like to have shoulds, so but I mean you better have a good feel. That's better.
Okay.
To me, you better have a good feel because because that'll get you everywhere, and everybody will love it. Everybody will love it because when you walk into the room and you take out your instrument and you set up, and when your feel is good, you might not be able to read so well. There might be certain things that you've, but man, they make it feel good. They make the music feel good, and that's just something that you can't. It's very difficult to duplicate. It's very difficult to manufacture, but you can certainly work on it. You know, um, you can work on it to the point where okay, my feels good. It's really dependable. I know when somebody calls me, I'll be there. The time is going to be there. The groove will be there. They'll like to play with me, and so you don't have to have a a huge knowledge of every style. If you can make the thing that you do feel good, then your colleagues are going to know it, and they'll like being around you. You
Yeah.
know,
And your
I think that's good.
that's and your
I
phone
think
will
you better have that.
your
Yeah.
yeah your phone will ring.
Yeah.
Well, this has been really
Yeah, and
fascinating,
you'll have fun
and you
every
have fun.
you'll have fun every time.
Yeah.
When it feels good, you have fun too. And that's, so
Okay. Well, thank you for your time today. And this has just been wonderful.
thank you, Monk. It's
Appreciate it.
really, really great talking with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like a full circle for me, sitting with your father and now with you. I wish we could have done this in person. Like
Yeah. I
that's
mean, yeah, me too. Yeah, and as I mentioned, many people come up to me and they'll say, I saw this thing online with your dad and Snooky, and it's just so incredible. It's I mean, they were best friends from 1937, 1937, 38, and that's just so beautiful to me. Love them so much.
and
It's
I
great to
think
see them
I
always
think
to see them together.
that thing we listened to, State Street Suite, I believe Snooky was on that. And
Absolutely,
you know,
absolutely.
if you want to point to why did that sound like it did, so wonderful, Snooky was a big part of that too, as well as your father who wrote it. All
That's
right,
right.
I hope we
That's
cross
right.
paths sometimes in the future. Best of luck to you.
Yeah, same here. So where is Hamilton
Well, it's in
exactly?
central New York
It's
State. It's a small
I'm
liberal
looking on a
arts
map
school. It's
now.
over 200 years old, and
Oh, it's near Utica.
it's near Utica. Yep.
Okay. Okay, good to know. Good to know. Anytime I'm that way, if I'm in Syracuse or something like that, I'll make sure to reach out.
Please do.
So,
All right. Thanks a lot. I'll just pause this and we'll say our
okay.
goodbyes.
Okay, sounds good.